Good evening, everyone. I hope each of you had a blessed and fun and, well, if you needed to work, productive weekend. Um, Thought I'd jump on here for a little bit to just give you an update on where we're at with the launching of the first podcast. It looks like the studio location is going to be ready for the 19th of August. So that's just less than 2 weeks away. And no, my half thief. Um, and that'll air at 10 a.m. Central Time. Topic, well, that's yet to be determined. I'll send out notices on, that outlines that particular episode. It, it's important, though. They'll all be important because there's so many important topics to cover and to come to a consensus on how we should proceed. It I've never in my 58 years seen so much chaos as I'm seeing today. Whether it's domestic, whether it's foreign, when you look at the big picture, it it's ugly everywhere. But but our focus needs to be here at home, domestically. We need to really take a good close look at where our federal dollars are going and make sure that they're being spent in a way that's in our best interest. We need to stop being the world's Department of Human Services and do more for the people that live here in our country that are struggling and having a hard time, whether it's a loss of a job, divorce, fresh out of prison. It just a lot of things need to be discussed and planned out. Stop. But I'm going to get interrupted by this guy. That's his nature. My other one, she's over there, perfectly content with a stick. But I wanted to talk about the homeless situation and the affordable housing crisis that we are experiencing. And I'm going to be probably covering that not only this evening, but I think that should be one of the first topics that we cover on the first episode. It because it is it's beyond a crisis. I don't even think crisis is a adequate enough word to describe the scenario that we're in. He's trying. He's determined to get that hat. Sit down. Go play with Sammy Joe. And yeah, sit down over here. Anyway, but the homelessness situation is beyond crisis level, and it's easily fixable. And it I was thinking about what I was going to talk about tonight, and a good example would be a little less than a year ago. I bought 10 acres of property in the middle of nowhere in northern Minnesota, and the intent was to, move the RV up there and slow build. It kind of used the 10 acres as a canvas to design as you go. I didn't want to have to hire an architect. Well, obviously I would have to eventually have to bring in an architect, but um, I didn't want the architect to do it all for me. I wanted to move out there, take the RV out there, and it was in reasonable distance away from mail, so I could have easily have commuted from that location to Mayo back and forth. And it would have given me a much cheaper place to live than your traditional RV parks like where I'm at now. It was a beautiful piece of property, and I was wise enough to put a stipulation in the purchase agreement that gave me the ability to return the property to the seller if I had any problems with obtaining the various permits that I would need. And the right out the gate, there was a problem because I was aware that half the property had some wetland issues, and I was good with that. It was the back half of the property, and um, wetlands traditionally bring in wildlife, and that was for me was part of the upside to that particular property. But the the center of that wetland issue was me not being able to make it wetter because what I proposed to the county up there was that I didn't want to mess around with the banks of the wetlands. I just wanted to make the area deeper so that my two four-legged kids could play in the water and have maybe like a 10-foot beach area just so they can get in and out of the water and play. And that became a huge issue. It once I mentioned that, the county quickly mentioned that I needed to have an environmental impact survey done. I had to hire an environmental engineer, and then had to get permission from the Army Corps of Engineers, and that was just to make wetlands wetter. Yeah. All, all, I, all I wanted to do is change it from the marshy one foot depth of just sludge to 3 or 4 or 5 feet of actual usable water. Like I said, more or less for the benefit of the four-legged kids and the wildlife that lived in the area. I'm sure would have appreciated that. And I, uh, I thought about that issue, and I kept on proceeding. I got with the utility company, and I paid the required fees to have some electric service run to the property, and then I I go back to the county, and I want to get permits to put in a slab for the RV, just so I can park the RV on a solid surface in an area that I knew I wouldn't be building on, and then just start from there, and they told me, well, that's not permissible under our current zoning ordinances. You have to limit your RV use on your property to 30 days a year. Sammy Joe? There we go. So now I got problems with involving the wetlands, and I have squirrels attracting the attention of my kids. And then I have the issue of only being able to park the RV there 30 days out of the year. And when your when your initial thought was to put the RV up on the property and slow build, slow build is going to take much longer than 30 days. So I then after being out a few $1,000s, I thought, well, this isn't going to work. I'm better off just taking the loss now, contacting the buyer and tell them I want to execute the provision that getting the permits that I needed for the type of use I wanted to use the property for isn't working out. And he was very receptive to the idea. He had no problems with it. And he took the property back, and all is well, and I ended wasting a few $1,000 with the utility company and some consultants that I had to hire along the way. But that, that you know, that was an easy solution for my housing situation that became not so easy after, again, government got involved. And it's unfortunate because, like I said, it's 10 acres. It was in the middle of nowhere. My nearest neighbors on either side of the property were 2 to 3 miles on either side. So my plans for the property would have never interfered with anyone. And the wildlife that it may have affected, I think, I can't speak for how they feel exactly, but for what lived up there, the moose, the elk, the deer, the coyote, and I would imagine some bear, they would have all appreciated an area to instead of just get drink from, maybe play in the water themselves. So it was a win-win scenario for everyone directly involved, but for some draconian zoning ordinance that kept me from being able to do that project. And and then as I read I stay current with what goes on around the country, especially when it comes to homelessness. It it's a mess, and then we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars everywhere else, and we have these same problems here over and over and over again. It actually, when it comes to homelessness, it that problem just keeps getting worse. It never improves. No matter what program they roll out, it never take, takes any kind of big dent out of that particular problem. There's been numerous efforts, going back to the 60s when HUD came out with this cooperative living program that had great intentions, and had it have been implemented the way it was supposed to be implemented, it would have benefited all the residents of those particular complexes in a way that they would have went from renters to homeowners. But capitalism at its finest stepped in, and lack of government oversight of their own program resulted in all the people that lived in those particular complexes being cheated out of ownership and just remaining renters. It'd be nice to see that program reinstated, but with much more oversight, because it was a beautiful program, and it's one that I litigated for a while, but I couldn't get. I won the first suit, gaining access to the books and records of the complex, but then when I filed the second suit that actually got to the fraud and deception and the abuse of the program by the property management company involved in HUD, that's where the problems arose when it came to getting people united. You know, Even when you can clearly show people the benefit of uniting and working together on this, you have people that just don't get it, and but it was all by design. They in that particular complex, the property management company made sure that any new residents over the years, as they got closer to paying off the HUD insured mortgage, where it would trigger the transfer of ownership from the housing cooperative as a whole to individual units. They made sure that the residents either weren't aware of that happening, or they were just too ill-informed or uneducated or unable, and in many cases unable to even speak our language to even digest what was going on. So again, that was all by design, and it's unfortunate that um, that litigation wasn't pursued to the end because a lot of people, and more than just the complex that I was associated with, but hundreds of other complexes would have benefited as well because I'm sure they were being taken advantage of in the same way. But it we got to stop relying on the government to solve this problem voluntarily. We keep leaving it in their hands, thinking they're going to take care of it. Despite some jurisdictions' best efforts, they they don't get it done, and we still have people living underneath overpasses and in the wintertime, in some cases, freezing to death. We have women and children living in cars and parking lots at Walmart or Flying J's or out truck stops across the country. We have homeless shelters that are just bulging at the seams and lack the capacity to handle all the people, and to the point where they're just handing out sleeping bags and telling people what areas of the woods that they could safely sleep at. That's those are hardly solutions for dealing with that issue. And what we need to do is we need to push the mini house scenario because I remember as a kid growing up, we lived in a modest home, but it was only 900 square feet, 1,000 square feet tops. Did have attached garage. And we had a big yard. We had a double yard, but you know, square foot wise, it really wasn't much bigger than some of these nicer sized mini houses, and it's a quick fix. So what I'm thinking is since uh, I want to try and kill two birds with one stone on this first project because of what I'm seeing here in the surrounding area around Mayo Clinic where I'm getting my health care, which is it's undisputable that it's that Mayo facility in Rochester, Minnesota, is the best hospital on the planet. By Newsweek, by Forbes, there's so many credible organizations and sources that all make that claim. It's not Mayo City, so it's a well-known fact. And unfortunately, unless you're a local to Mayo, or you live in, or you're a resident of Minnesota, you don't have the luxury of, of getting that high quality health care unless you can afford to fly in from wherever you live, like so many do, and hope to be accepted as a patient. So my thinking is, instead of me looking for another, because I was going to look for another piece of property for myself, but now that I'm going in a different direction in my life, I think instead of looking for 10 acres, I should be looking for 100, 150, maybe even 200 acres to accommodate not only a mini house subdivision, but also some RV parking that would, excuse me, sit down, go around. Right, go around this way. Come around behind me, because you're going to knock the table over. Come on, this way. Keep going. Other way. Go. All right, thank you. Sorry. The nothing like four-legged puppy interruptions. but you really got to watch them. They can, it's amazing how much damage they can cause in just a short amount of time. The other one, if I don't watch her around my mail or anything, any kind of paperwork that's important, she'll do a government shred on those things in the blink of an eye. Shut down, go. But the getting back to my thoughts, instead of looking for another 10 or 15 or 20-acre parcel that I originally had purchased, um, looking for something larger to accommodate not only I know what you're up to, stay away. He wants that hat bad. And the get enough size of a property that would accommodate, like I said, a mini house campus or subdivision, however you want to refer to it, and then maybe some temporary parking for RVers that are coming in for Garrett Mail. Not a vacation destination. This is in this area. There like here in Red Wing, there's some RV parks, but they're more for people that are here on vacation. They're here, and the rates reflect that. It's parking RVs in some cases can be more expensive than staying in a hotel. Especially in the Grand Rapids area where I'm from. Those RV parks there, I could stay with my if I'm using some if I'm part of it if I'm using my Wyndham Rewards program. Uh, I can stay at a Baymont or Days Inn cheaper than I can stay overnight at a RV park. And without all the hassle of driving to the RV park, hooking everything up, and then at some point packing everything back up, unhooking, putting everything back together, hooking back up to your vehicle, and taking it back to storage. So it RV parks have become really expensive. So my thoughts are for this first project to find an adequate amount of land to not only accommodate the mini house subdivision, but also some area for people that come in from out of state that are there solely for getting care at Mayo Clinic. Because that's a big burden. The hotel rates around Mayo are pretty high. And when I first came up here, I was paying that first weekend I came up here for the initial CT scan that they wanted to do. It cost me more for my four-legged kids to stay at the hotel than it did for me. They charged more for the two kids than they did charge for me. And then they didn't. And then in the morning they give me breakfast, and they don't even come around to give them a doggy biscuit. So it there needs to be some alternatives so other people can have the benefit of getting that type of care. Because the care at Mayo at that location. There's other Mayo locations, but they don't have the same ranking as the one in Rochester. Rochester is considered the best healthcare facility on the planet, and it shows. I went in last week. I had that nuclear um, PET CT scan, and at the end, I was led to believe that would be a definitive test to determine what exactly is left that needs to be looked at, and it didn't turn out to be definitive. What it ended up being was a one or the other. It's either still a lung infection that they've been treating effectively, but it's still there. It's one of those lung infections that's deadly, and it's a very slow heal. It's not like the flu or any type of regular virus that you catch and you get some antibiotics and it goes away in 10 days or whatever. This is one of those type of lung infections that, in most cases, takes years to clear up if you survive it. So, being that I'm so far away from data diagnosis, knock on wood, I think it's safe to say that I'm part of the 40% that survive that infection, opposed to the 60% that don't. But the other result that recent test showed was what they couldn't determine was if some of the areas that they're seeing that were highlighted by this radioactive sugar that they put in to highlight the areas of concern is malignancy, and whether it's benign or if it's malignant. It, obviously, malignant is not the way you want to see it go. Benign is the word I want to hear, but now they got to run more tests to find in that particular area of the lungs. We'll have to go back in and get more samples, grow more stuff in a petri dish, and put me back in waiting mode. See how what the results are on that. Hopefully it comes back benign, but it's gonna be at least a few weeks before I'll find that out. But in the meantime, life goes on. Even if it's the worst case scenario and it's malignant and it requires the more aggressive type of treatment. So John, go around the other way. Stay behind me. Come on. You're going to knock over my table. The even if it's the worst case scenario with the C word, I would suspect that it would be in the very early stages of it. So, and given that I'm being treated at Mayo, I really would have no concerns about them not being able to treat that effectively and successfully. So, life doesn't stop or life doesn't get put on hold while I wait to know about those outcomes. So in the meantime, I'll push forward with looking for property, looking for sponsors, looking for donors, looking for people of interest that want to participate in that project. I think the main thing is going to be finding land that is within reasonable proximity of Mayo, Rochester, that you're not going to have too many hassles from government to put together that type of development. It's hard to imagine, in 2023 with homelessness being the problem that it is, that they would raise any issues over this kind of a project, but it only takes one, and you end up in sometimes a legal battle over challenging zoning ordinances or some other ways that they can stifle those type of projects. So, that search will begin. I'm not going to stay on here much longer because it looks like it's going to be starting to rain soon. And it's been a long day. But I just wanted to let you know that the first episode is going to air on the second Saturday from now at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. And you should be able to see it live on Facebook, or you'll be able to see it live on YouTube, or live on the website. It should be able to be seen on those three particular platforms. And you're interested in participating, feel free to reach out and let me know what your interests are and how you would like to help, whether it's working on some IT stuff or donating some funds or some time in other ways. All would be welcome. It's something that we need to move forward with. There's a lot of other problems that need to be dealt with, but it all starts with housing. If people aren't adequately housed, then they it makes it much more difficult for them to function in employment or school or even obtaining health care. If you don't have stable housing, in a lot of instances, it's almost impossible to get health care, even if you're at the best facility on the planet. I myself have had to put off a couple of surgeries on occasion over the past few years because for various reasons, either I couldn't find kennels for them that had openings, or I couldn't afford the time I would have to spend in a hotel for a week or two, because some of those surgeries require you to be in a more traditional setting than an RV. So, so even lack of consistent and stable housing affects healthcare. And then if you're living underneath an overpass or off the woods somewhere, you're probably not getting any health care. So or at the very minimum, you're maybe seeing a primary care doctor for a physical once in a blue moon. But living in that way of life probably not only shortens your lifespan, but it makes your shortened lifespan filled with more illnesses than it normally would have otherwise had you have had stable housing along the way. So much hinges on having stable housing, and you can't have these days to have stable housing. Well, you need to have an income, because the rents keep going up, but the wages don't. And it seems like the best option, because not everybody needs a 2,000, 2,500, 5,000 square foot home with a 3-car attached garage. Many people like myself, that grew up with a single mom and one brother and a Labrador, we comfortably lived in that 900 or 1,000 square foot home, and we never felt that it was too small. I never felt like I didn't have enough room to store my stuffs. We had ample room. So to live in a mini house should be pretty comfortable for a lot of people, especially the ones that don't have anything at all. But even if you're a retiree looking to downsize, that would be another good option for you too. Do you really need a 2,000 square foot home anymore? Your kids are all gone. Your grandkids come over once in a blue moon. I told you you're not going to do that to me today. He pumps me out every day. He just pokes me out every day. But what was it? Now he makes me lose my train of thought. Well, anyway, thanks, bud. You made me forget what I was in the middle of talking about. But anyway, it's starting to rain. Did you want to say something? You got something to say? No, he just wants to come and take the hat. which he's probably about to do right now. Because he's got that look. He gets that hat, and his eyes get all beady, his cheeks get all puffy. He just feels like he really got over when he gets that hat. But let's focus, let's focus on housing for people. Whether it's someone that's living underneath an overpass that we drive by all the time and we see that shouldn't be there, or a retiree that's living in a house that they can barely afford to maintain because it's way too big for them. Their utility costs are higher, their property taxes are higher, and they're now on a much lower income than they used to be. Many houses is an answer to a lot of things. So I think that's the best starting point for the organization that I formed. And there'll be other things. There'll be other projects that we undertake. But right now, I think this is a good start. So stay tuned, and I appreciate you spending some time with me this evening. And if you have any suggestions, comments, always feel free to contact me. My emails are listed, my telephone number is listed. I'm a pretty accessible guy. And in closing, as always, if you haven't been in your past, now's a good time to start being a psychotic nonconformist. And if you need help learning how to do that, tune into the episodes. I'm sure after a few of them, they'll catch on, and you'll be able to properly function as one. Because that's psychotic times require psychotic replies and responses. So, with that said, stay safe and have a blessed night.